transparency in relation to item 6. So it makes reference to a cabinet decision in relation to funding. I was part of that cabinet decision making. I've discussed that extensively with the legal advisor and the planning colleagues, and believe I still have an open mind in relation to the application. So just wanting to declare that for transparency.
Thank you. And again, we'll make sure that the minutes reflect that, just to be upfront about it. In which case, the next item on the agenda is item 4, determining planning applications. Members are asked to note the advice from the Head of Legal Services. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Item 5, requests to address the committee. We've received the following requests to address the committee. Item number 6, forgive me, I don't plan to do a complete roll call because I understand there are a number of people here, but could I just ask please, if you're here for item number 6, would you mind raising a hand so I can tell that there are people here? There are plenty of you, that is very good, thank you very much. Item number 7, the names that I have are Gary Simpson and James Stewart, Paul Brennan and Ben Kelway. Thank you very much, welcome. Item number 8, 212 Upton Lane, I have Ian Hopwood and Ilyas Patel. Thank you and welcome. And item number 9, Ian Ferguson, Olivia Burton, Ed Law and Chris Gascoigne. Thank you. And item number 10, I have Tony Gallagher.
Yes.
Thank you. The usual practice is to allow up to 5 minutes in total for both supporters and objectors. However, in light of the size of the application, I am minded to allow 10 minutes for item 6 for the applicants, which is Silvertown Quays. Is that agreed by committee members, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can we also please agree the remainder of the order of business as outlined on the agenda?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay. So please note the full consideration and planning assessment is covered really very comprehensively in the committee report, which I know members will have had due regards to. We've also received the officer update report, and fresh hard copies of that have just been circulated to us. Could members please note the officer update report? Thank you. And with that, may I please call upon the applicants team for item 6, which is Silvertown Quays, to address the committee. You have up to 10 minutes. I will try to get your attention and let you know when you just have a couple of minutes left.
We just check Shirley has the presentation.
Yeah, of course. Timer until you're all sorted ready.
We'll also check this is the update. So there's not one of the item 6.
Is just the latest heads of terms should be.
Heads of terms, okay, thank you.
So it's the same as well as the update report last time.
Got it, thank you very much. There we go.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councillor Tripp and the committee members. I'm Jess, and I have the very fortunate job of speaking on behalf of the Silvertown Partnership. Slide, please, Shirley, if you can scoot down a bit. Thank you. It is with immense pride that we are all here tonight to brief members on our plans for the future, to bring this significantly underutilised part of Newham back to life, to deliver a legacy we are all proud of and one that future generations of Newham can truly benefit from. Sat in the heart of the Royal Docks and over 60 acres, equivalent to 45 football pitches, Silvertown has sat vacant for 40 years. We hope your decision tonight will be a key milestone in the Silvertown journey and the real beginning of change. Slide, please. Sure. Change which has only been made possible due to the power of partnership, a partnership which spans all levels of government, all aligned to one purpose: to bring the site's rich assets to life again, to ensure affordable housing comes first, to respond bravely to what the community has requested, and to take a long-term view, to create legacy. Silvertown has been shaped for and by the local community, and we want to thank everyone whose views helped shape this vision. A passionate and driven professional team, many of which who are here tonight, has then curated this vision and turned it into a reality. It's also the dedication of Newham's officers which have ensured this reality will deliver the best possible outcomes for Newham's residents. We want to thank the team, Marina, Liam, Ben and James, for all their hard work. Slide, please. It wouldn't be lost on anyone here that recent conditions have made delivering homes difficult, but we kept delivering and via our existing permission have recently completed our first homes at Silvertown, a completely affordable building of 106 new affordable homes. And in partnership with Guinness, our registered provider partner, our first Newham residents will move in the coming weeks. A huge milestone. Further, we've been to this committee twice already this year, securing 2 additional permissions, which will enable us to deliver another 500 affordable homes. We have ensured affordable housing comes first and collectively created momentum. Slide, please, Shelley. But today is about building on that momentum. We are a placemaking driven partnership committed to delivering the vision. We will create a new vibrant centre for the Royal Docks with new connections for locals and for residents. We will transform the waterside and enhance Newham's relationship with this unique asset. We will maximise open space. We will celebrate heritage by bringing Millennium Mills and Silo Deep back to life and create a space which will generate the jobs Newham's residents need. Slide, please, Jeff. Silvertown will deliver lasting benefits for Newham and for London as a whole. We will deliver circa 7,000 new homes, of which 26% will be affordable. This represents 1,800 affordable homes. We will deliver 1,000 much-needed family homes. 60% of these will be affordable. And we will deliver the infrastructure needed to support these homes with the new primary school as well as health and community facilities. We will deliver circa 8,000 new jobs and Silvertown will be a London living wage place. We'll deliver 6 football pitches of open space and restore the heritage assets which make Silvertown truly unique. And we will continue to drive low carbon outcomes, ensuring Silvertown contributes positively to a more sustainable future. I'll shortly pass to Jason, who will discuss more about our master plan. But before I do, I want to re-emphasise the significance of the milestone we hope to achieve together today and the contribution everyone has made in bringing this significant site back to life. Thank you. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Jason Pryor, the Master Plan Lead for Silvertown. So Silvertown is a missing piece of the Royals. 60 acres that will be the urban core at the centre of activity and community, and the connector of the communities to the south across the new footbridge that links across the docks. Next slide, please. Over the last few years, the master plan has been developed through one of the most comprehensive collaborative design processes in London. Through the process illustrated on the slide, the proposals have become robust and deliverable, and I would particularly like to thank the design review panel for their continued input and advice that has greatly enriched the project. Community engagement through workshops, exhibitions, pop-ups and youth sessions have been very rewarding. People told us they wanted safe, active, welcoming public space and better ways to enjoy the water. And as you will see, these are now foundational to the design. On the next slide, if we could go through one more, please. Thank you.
We have to zoom out a little bit,
Yeah,
Shirley, if possible. Sure.
So on this illustrative master plan, we describe a connected, inclusive, characterful new piece of London. A derelict vacant site transformed into a thriving waterside community with distinct neighbourhoods. The dock edges are open to the public. Spillers Street links to the new pedestrian bridge that seamlessly connects neighbourhoods to the south and the north of the Elizabeth line. Whilst new streets, squares and parks bring the neighbourhoods to life. Next, please. The master plan is structured around 3 essential character areas that connect our neighbourhoods. Silvertown Centre is to the west, the mixed-use heart and local centre, anchored by Spillers Street, framed by the historic mill and Silo Deep. To the centre we have Pontoon Dock, a very special, vibrant waterside community and destination, animated day and evening. And then to the east, Victoria Gardens and Silverworks, greener, calmer, neighbourhoods with family housing, a school, workspace, and generous open space and public realm. So let's look at some of these in more detail. On the next slide, Spillers Street. It's the heart of our local centre. Active ground floors, independent retail, flexible workspace, and a great streetscape, a real neighbourhood. On the next slide, we see the Mills Quarter and Silo D. They're the anchors of our heritage at Silvertown. They anchor new employment areas and cultural quarters, public squares framed by mixed-use residential neighbourhoods, a place to celebrate our heritage and power our future. On the next slide, we see Pontoon Dock, our social waterside destination, a year-round lively place with great cafes, play and leisure spaces spilling out onto generous waterside terraces, creating continuous active waterfront. And then on the next slide, a slightly different view of Pontoon Dock. It shows how new streets opened up onto the dock edge to create a unified public realm, a wonderful inclusive place to gather, to play, walk and relax. The next slide shows our X-Park and Silverworks responding creatively to the airport context. This is an energetic park designed for active play and movement overlooked by flexible workspace for small businesses and makers. And then finally, from me, to the east, Victoria Gardens and Victoria Green, new neighbourhoods responding to Newham's need for high-quality family housing in a green and calm and safe environment, homes allied to community space, play areas, and of course the local school, the green heart of the master plan. Now I'd like to hand to Chris.
Thank you. Next slide, 2 minutes, I'll be quick, thank you. Thank you, Jason, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to take the opportunity to summarise the planning benefits, all of which are detailed in your committee report. If you make the slide a little bigger if possible, thank you. Firstly, the delivery of 7,000 new homes, contributing very significantly to the Council's housing delivery targets. This includes affordable housing at 26% by unit, with a policy-compliant tenure split and a commitment to a minimum of 39% for low-cost rent homes as 3 beds. We have a range of flexible employment-generating uses, new offices, shops, food and beverage uses, and providing much-needed new facilities for the new and existing residents, and creating up to 8,000 jobs in the process. We have extensive new open spaces and play facilities for all age groups, as you've just seen. We have a new 3 form-entry primary school in addition to a nursery. New community facilities, including floor space, to be offered to the council at peppercorn rent. We have significant heritage benefits, including the much-anticipated refurbishment and use of the iconic Millennium Mills building and Grade 2 listed Silo D. We have commitments, of course, of the delivery of Royal Victoria Dock Bridge. There is a Section -6 package, including contributions towards employment, and policy-compliant levels, 35% of local labour join construction and 50% join operation. In addition, Section 106 includes improvements to Pontoon Dock DLR station, other sustainable transport initiatives, highway improvements, healthcare facilities in partnership with the NHS, and of course sustainability. And finally, this planning application will create a new heart for the existing community we have consulted with extensively. The fact that nobody has registered to speak, despite over 4,000 addresses being consulted, is truly a testament to the success of the community engagement. To conclude, we trust that members will recognise these many public benefits and agree with the officer recommendation to grant planning permission, allowing this long vacant site to finally realise its full potential to deliver the homes, jobs and places that Newham and your residents deserve. We'd be very happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to suggest that, as usual, we move on to the officer report and then address our questions either to applicants or to officers as needed. I do realise, though, one note I forgot to make was that we need to make sure that the minutes reflect that we did have a site visit to this site. That was on the 27th of June, where we visited the site and walked around it and saw some of the plans.
Good evening, Chair, members. So this presentation will be presented jointly by officers Lian and I. So item 6 relates to Silvertown Quays. This slide shows the location and the boundary of the application site. Silvertown Quays covers 28.8 hectares and is largely vacant brownfield, reflecting its historic use and dock-related industries. It is the largest remaining undeveloped site with Royal Docks. The site is adjacent to Britannia Village, a residential neighbourhood to the west. To the south, across North Woolwich Road, Ponton Dock DLR Station, Thames Barrier Park, and the new development, including Royal Wharf and Barrier Point. Across the dock to the north sits the Excel Centre, with a surrounding residential, hotel, and commercial uses. London City Airport lies to the east. The site is a designated strategic site S21 in the adopted Newham local plan. It also falls with the Royal Docks Enterprise Zone and the Royal Docks and the Beckton Waterfront Opportunity Area as identified in the London plan. It is subject to London City Airport's obstacle limitation services, which restrict building heights. Despite the site has a PTEL rating at 183, it benefits from good transport accessibility, being close to Ponton Dock DLR Station and the Customer House Station, as well as major road connections through North Woolwich Road. The site is not in a conservation area, but has the two heritage assets, Silo D and the Millennium Mills. The key requirements for S21 includes residential-led mixed-use development with potential for leisure, hospitality, green industrials, and visitor attractions uses. New residential development on this site should form part of the wider neighborhood at Silvertown, supported by local shopping and community uses. Leisure uses should relate to water space, public access to the dock edge, and good connections through Excel. Local town centers and North Woolwich Road should be provided. This slide shows the description of the development. In summary, the current hybrid planning application includes two elements. The detailed component includes 442 new homes and up to 78,400 square meter non-residential floor space. Bring the Millennium Mills back to use, dock infill works, and temporary energy center and construction Wi-Fi facilities. The outline component includes up to some 684,000 square meter non-residential floor space, capped at 6,730 units, and up to some 98,000 square meter non-residential floor space across a range of uses. There have been 3 rounds of public consultations during the planning application stage, including the reconsultations on amendments. 4,178 neighboring properties was consulted during each round of consultation. Each consultation period was open for 30 days. A total of 11 responses were received, with 8 being supportive, but with some concerns, 1 objecting and 2 being neutral. So this slide shows the neighboring comments received. Detailed comments received along with the officers' responses are set out in details in the committee report. And I pass over to my colleague.
Thanks, Marina. So moving on to the history of the site. So the original planning permission, or what we refer to as the OPP, is the permission which exists on the site at the moment. Large parts of that application are being transferred over, and that's what Marina referred to as the detailed component. And this slide just highlights that several reserve matters have come forward and been approved at various points since the OPP was granted. And I just draw attention to plot 78 is not currently in the detailed component of this application, but the applicants have stated their intent to resubmit that shortly after this gets approval, if it does. Moving on to a timeline of this application in particular. So we won't dwell on this for too long, just to give you a brief overview of how the application has progressed. So the key points here I'll just highlight are the changes in the level of affordable housing. This was due to a change in the amount of non-resi floor space, which was amended during the course of the application. As you can see, it's moved on further since then. And again, there was a final position of 26.38% of affordable housing. And then lastly, this is just to reflect the kind of consultations and the discussions we've had with the applicants on the conditions and the heads of terms bringing us to the committee today. Back to Marina.
Yeah, the key planning issues which will be covered with this presentation tonight are principle of development, housing, heritage, design, landscape, and public realm, amenity, transport, and planning obligations. The site benefits from an extant and implemented outline planning permission, which includes 3,000 homes. The current master plan represents a strategic reorientation towards a residential-led regeneration with a delivery of 7,172 homes, consistent with the site allocation, and will contribute positively to the borough's housing targets. Residential-led regeneration of the site is supported. So the master plan process proposes up to 176,000 square of non-residential floor space across a range of uses. The table on this slide shows the proposed maximum floor area in respect of each of the land uses with each development zone, which includes office, retail, food, beverage, cultural facilities, education, hotel, community, and medical uses. So the master plan is governed by 4 current areas, which has already explained in details by the applicant. So we will move to next slide. So although Silvertown Quays is not designated as a town centre in the adopted local plan, the emerging local plan identifies the southern part of the development zone 2 as an extension of the existing local centres, intended to meet local needs for retail, leisure, and community users. The strategic site allocation also supports the creation of a new local centre with the master plan. Accordingly, the establishment of a new local town centre as part of the master plan is supported in principle. To assess the scale and the potential impact of the proposed town centre floor space, the council commissioned Urban Space to undertake an independent retail and town centre impact assessment review. So the review assisted the council in establishing an appropriate framework of controls to manage the quantum, distribution, and the phasing of the retail and the leisure users across the site, ensure this remain proportionate to local needs. This approach will also help the proposed local centre to function effectively with the borough's town centre hierarchy without compromising the vitality and the viability of the existing and emerging town centres elsewhere in Newark. After having carefully considered the information received, policy team has recommended a number of conditions to manage the distributions and the location of the town centre users and their floor space. This includes conditions for local retail and food beverage. And the conditions relate to, for example, leisure facilities, cultural facility, hotel, office, as such. The master plan also includes the provision of the primary school with nursery provision for 30. Also, Section 1.6 has secured the minimum provision of 892 square meters for community facilities, 470 of which will be dedicated to council-run community facilities. The Section 1.6 also secures the council's run facilities with a minimum terms of 125 years at a peppercorn rent with fully fitted standard. So having regarded the information submitted, officers consider planning conditions are essential, managing the location and the quantum of the non-residential users. Subject to conditions and the completion of the Section 1.6 agreement, policy team concludes that proposed office, retail, food beverage, culture, leisure, hotel, and community uses are complementary to the strategic policy context of the site, will contribute to the creation of a diverse and vibrant mixed-use neighborhood. So in summary, the proposed residential-led mixed-use scheme at Silvertown Keys is fully supported in land use terms and aligned with both strategic and local policy objectives. It makes a substantial contribution to housing delivery while maintaining appropriate scale of supporting town center users. Subject to conditions and Section 106 agreements, officers consider that the master plan presents a comprehensive and substantial neighborhood, integrating housing, community uses, and employment opportunities in line with the special vision for the Royal Docks.
Thank you. And moving on to housing, this slide is just to draw your attention to the tilted balance which applies at the moment. Members are probably quite familiar with this because it applies to all our cases at the time being. This is where a council can't demonstrate a full housing supply. There is a presumption in favour of housing development, and that's just what this slide draws your attention to. So speaking of the affordable housing itself, so as I mentioned, the final offer is 26.38%. We're being very specific because on a scheme of this scale, that 0.38 represents quite a large number of units. I think we worked out around 25, so that's why it's so specific. It'll be at the policy split, 60% social rent and 40% intermediate housing. So during the course of the application, during that timeline I showed you earlier, there was a change in the application, and at one stage an offer of 32% with 50-50 split was made. However, the way that the viability should work is you first comply with the policy, which in our case the split is weighted in favour of social housing, and then the affordable percentage is whatever comes out at the end. So that's why that's reduced. So that viability assessment was reviewed by BNP Paribas on behalf of the council, and they have agreed with the outcome. They do consider 26.38 as the maximum reasonable amount available on the site. And as mentioned, the detailed components, so the first part would contain 98% affordable housing. So there is a provision of affordable which comes forward nice and early, which we do support. So we have review mechanisms in place every 1,500 units to determine if there's any surplus profit that could be used to improve the affordable offer. We've also got what we're calling milestones secured in the 106. So this table on your right is the milestones, and these require the applicant to hit certain levels of affordable housing at the various milestones. The reason it varies is because, as you can imagine, if up front you provide a large number of affordable, the later phases may not hit that same level, so it needs to balance out across. So this is so that we can be sure that towards the end of the development, we are still hitting large percentages and it's not left to the end to be kind of made up last minute. Lastly, in the 106, there is a requirement that no more than 1,032 units are to be occupied, and there's 59% of those units are affordable. And across the rest of the development, 100% of affordable units must be completed before the occupation of more than 75% of market housing. So again, that's just to ensure that the affordable housing is brought forward as early as possible. Moving on to the housing mix, so the detailed component of 70% family units, and there would be a requirement site-wide to be 15% family units. Of those family units, 39% be low cost 10 years, which is at the moment. In the event that the review mechanisms identify surplus profit, as mentioned in the last slide first, that would be used to up the amount of affordable housing provided. If they do meet the 50% target, then any further surplus could then be used to improve the family housing offer. And again, with the family housing, there are a series of milestones there on the left on that table, which they will need to hit across the site for the same reasons as before. So we acknowledge that it doesn't meet family policy of 39%. However, we do take into account the overall viability position, the very large number of units on site. So I believe there's a minimum requirement for, I think it's 999 family units on the site. So even though it doesn't meet our sort of 39% policy requirement, it still is a substantial amount of family units. We also take into account the tilted balance there. So we do consider it to be acceptable in this.
So this slide shows the heritage assets with the site and in the surrounding area. The application is a EIA scheme, so the council commissioned LUC to review and access the submitted environmental statement. The ES review also reassess the potential impact on the heritage assets on the site and the surrounding area. So the ES review concludes the impact on the setting of these heritage assets is acceptable in heritage terms. So during the statutory consultation period, Historic England, the GLA and the council's officers raised concerns regarding the exclusion of Silo D from the current HPA. The exclusion may undermine the future viability of the proposals for its repair and adaptive reuses of Silo D. It is also in contrary to local plans, master planning policy requirements. Extensive discussion have taken place between the applicant, GLA, Historic England and Council throughout the assessment process. To secure the restoration and reuse of the Silo D, the applicant has agreed to a series of Section 116 obligations, which are shown on these slides. So this also includes the wording of subject to viability or feasibility removed and ensure the timely delivery of the associated works. So let's move to design. The detailed component of the master plan contains Plot 6, which has been completed and ready for occupation. Plots 1D, 2D, and is arranged around the principal character areas, the Mills Quarter and Silo D quarters. This has also explained in details by the applicant. So the previous consent design for Plot 1D, 2D, Mills Building, Plot 6, have all been carried forward unchanged, ensuring continuity of the design quality and the consistency with the established master plan frameworks. The design code will be an important controlling document for the future reserved matters application. Establish design principle related to the architecture, scale, massing, materiality, landscape design, accessibility, and straight hierarchy. The application is also accompanied by 8 parameter plans. Like the design code, this will be controlling document for future reserved matter applications and must be followed. And then the following slide just shows the example of these parameter plans. So in summary, the master plan layout, design code, and parameter plans successfully balance the heritage conservation, urban regeneration, and the contemporary architecture, delivering a comprehensive and distinctive identity for the Silvertown Quays development. And let's move to the landscape and the public realm. The development will deliver a minimum of 41,510 square meter public open space across the master plan. This has been secured by the conditions. And this slide shows the detail for the children play space, soft hard landscape, public realm improvements, UGF, public and BNG ecology enhancement, as such, are all secured by conditions.
Okay, moving on to amenity. As Marina mentioned, this application was accompanied by an environmental statement. As part of that review, LUC recommended a large number of conditions, which are in the appendix, which are there to control impacts from the development as it comes forward and to make sure that the amenity levels are acceptable. Now moving on to transport. So the development would be car-free other than Blue Badge. It would include 1,252 long stay spaces of cycle parking and 579 short stay spaces. There would be a car club membership incentive provided for either Section 106. There would be a requirement for a travel plan to be submitted in each phase of the development and then monitored through the Section 106 so that we encourage any sustainable travel choices. There's also financial contributions of 650,000 and 400,000, which goes to our LBN Highways team. This is towards improvements along the North Woolwich Road, so it includes improvements to the nearby roundabout and cycle lanes and general sort of public realm improvements. Moving on to the bridge. So the bridge was identified as an important part of the application as mitigation for the application, I should say. The bridge has been through planning, it has its own permission, so we're not going to sort of reopen that here, but just to say that the permission exists. The 106 is in the process of being signed, I believe, hopefully very soon. And then we've just touched on the requirement to, the LBN employment team have identified that they could reduce their requirement of 11 million for labour contributions to allow some money to go towards this bridge. And lastly, in the 106, there is a requirement that no more than 1,032 units could be occupied until the bridge is completed. So that represents our discussions with the applicant as the earliest point at which the bridge could be delivered, so that we can ensure that that comes nice and early. And just touch on the TfL response. So TfL responded to the planning report last time at the Winds Committee. It's now been incorporated into the main report, but I will touch on it here. So as part of their response, they noted that they would like to see 16 million given to them for improvements to pontoon docks, cycle stations, and things like that. The 106 we've settled on gives them 10.1 million to use in any way that they feel is necessary. They have identified to us they think that 10.1 is insufficient. We do acknowledge it, but there are compromises that need to be made. So I just mentioned one previously, the employment amount of local labour financial contributions, and there's also the NHS position. So how financial contributions are apportioned to different consultees is a decision for the LPA. In this case, we decided that the 10.1 million is reasonable. It's about 40% of the money being secured. Appreciate it's not as much as TfL would like, but the only way to kind of up any more money being provided to our consultees would be to reduce affordable housing. So officers chose to prioritise affordable housing as the priority, and then the money left over then gets apportioned. We consider this to be a reasonable position. And I should draw your attention to, there is a number of trees which are alongside the front of the site. Well, firstly, there are over 1,000 new trees we've planted across the site. So there's quite a large net gain, as you can imagine, on the site as a whole. Specifically on the line of trees which are along North Woolwich Road, the LBN Highways team have indicated to us that it's an absolute priority to kind of retain these trees. They are considered to be community assets. So as part of the 106, there is a requirement for the applicant to provide a plan of what trees are to be removed and justification for it. The highways team will have the final say on whether they agree to those trees being removed. If they do, replacement trees will be secured via financial contributions towards replacements, which may be, it could be alongside the road, but it could be elsewhere in the borough, depending on how the highways team consider to use them. So then just moving very briefly on to the heads of terms. So we passed out just before the meeting started the most up-to-date appendix of the heads of terms. I don't expect you to read through this. This just represents the most latest version we've had with our legal team. And then moving on to recommendations. So I won't read all this out, but in a nutshell, the committee is asked to agree with the recommendations below. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We're going to move on to discussion and questions. Can I ask members that have queries they want to raise to indicate by raising their hand? Councillor Morris, and then next to you, Councillor Morris.
I actually have half a dozen questions, but I'm going to keep it to 3 and come back after the members have given their insights. So I'm going to say, so 3 questions. So first of all, first question, workspace in civil works. Can I ask what's the business case where you know there's demand for that commercial space? I'm keeping in mind close to Dockside, there's actually a number of empty offices that are unused right now. And then we get to understand what's the demand, if there is any, what's the business case for it. I noticed that the design review panel requested details, suggested that there needs to be more accessibility for the Docks Edge, and I wondered whether you can provide further details on specifically how, actually no, sorry, I'll have to withdraw that question. So, sorry, that's my bad. So my second question is, one of the consultations requested usage for gym, swimming and fitness facilities. And is there space within the master plan for these facilities specifically around swimming? While the consultee suggested there wasn't a swimming pool in the area, there actually is in Royal Dock, Royal Wharf, but will there be one within this new town centre? My third question will be wind mitigation. So the design review panel identified wind and there being a wind tunnel as a significant risk. Can I ask what mitigations have you designed to reduce the risk of wind?
Thank you. Questions. Will we take all of them in order?
please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. To start briefly on the point about civil works and the business case, you'll see what we've. This is obviously a large application to be built out over a number of years, and so we've inevitably built in a degree of flexibility between land uses for that exact point. Because and I'll let Jess talk about this in a minute. There's kind of a lot of market research has gone into floor spaces we're proposing. Equally, we've built in a degree of flexibility to move between land uses over time so that we can respond to market demands. The last thing we want to do is to build something that is then vacant.
Yeah, so we completely agree with you, and we're quite conscious of the existing vacancies in the Royal Docks, and not be repeating that. We'll be market testing, finding tenants first before we progress in detail designs to the council. But that flexibility has been a really important part of the discussion. The Outline Planning Commission has inherent flexibility to make sure that it has longevity. So I think hopefully that gives councillors comfort that it can adapt and can change as things change in the future.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You did start a question around accessibility around the dock edge, just to confirm that all of the dock edge is accessible to the public.
Yeah.
So just
So in terms of supplementary question, in terms of ownership of land, is it within the public domain or is it privately owned?
It will be a privately owned estate, but it will be publicly accessible.
Can I ask what's the legal basis for? So, what is the rights of access to that private land for a member of the public? So, can
Yeah, it's all public. Yeah. So
can a private landowner choose to close it off? Because I'm thinking of Excel specifically. When Excel needed to expand some works, it essentially closed off its waterfront, which caused a lot of accessibility issues for agricultural.
in a temporary way to bring forward the construction of that Excel, correct? But then now it's open again for the public.
But what I'm saying is the reason why they wanted to close it, and they did it without, sorry, through the chair. So they closed it without consulting the council. And if it's for construction purposes, that's fine, but
Yeah.
the situation I want to avoid is the landowner decide to close it off just because they can.
No. So the access around the dock will be publicly accessible all the time unless there is a temporary construction safety issue that we need to resolve. That will be for the public. We've been incredibly focused in the design review panel discussions and everything to make sure that we open up that dock edge. It's such a special part about living in the Royal Docks to make sure that's protected for the whole scheme.
Sorry, through the chair. Just for clarification,
Yes.
what I'm asking is what's the legal basis of keeping
Yeah.
that park open, what's the protection for the public? If there is any, and it's okay if there isn't. But
Yeah.
that's
I'm
what
not sure of the exact legal mechanism that facilitates that being protected. We can come back, 'cause I'm sure there is. The estate management company sort of has to.
It strikes me
Yeah.
that an access to the dock edge, particularly where our planning policy is so keen on waterside developments, opening up access to the water, is probably a bigger issue than this one application here. And perhaps we could ask officers to take that away and to report back to us. Because I think the overall point is an important one, is that access to the water is obviously
Absolutely.
not only a kind of an important design principle, but also really important for people enjoying the space. So perhaps we could, as it were, put a pin in that, but make sure we come back to that important question for
Thank you,
the
Chair.
committee. John's second question was around the provision of fitness and leisure facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So leisure facilities and access to gyms and swimming is one of the most frequent bits of feedback that we get from the community. So we're very focused on it. In terms of gym facilities, we in plot 78, which is one of the plots that we've been to committee already this year and got planning permission for, we'll have a leisure gym at the base of it, accessible to everyone. For a paid membership, a gym for everyone. In terms of swimming, we are incredibly passionate about improving access to swimming within the dock. And you've seen some of the images of what we hope to achieve. We'll be back in terms of how to deliver that from a detail component when we get to the reserve matters for that area, but it's protected in terms of the outline that we're talking about here.
Chair, supplementary question. It does almost. So the point I'm making is it's good that you're allowing swimming in the docks
Yeah.
itself. I'm
Yeah.
very pleased for that.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking is for indoor swimming
Okay.
facilities. And there is a high demand for it within the borough, but because it's much more costly, particularly around private gyms in particular,
Yeah.
it's not financially viable. So would there be an opportunity to have indoor swimming pools at some point, some part of the master plan?
It's not currently envisaged within any of the detailed designs that we've progressed. That is not to say that it wouldn't be possible in the future. We have the outline planning commission seeks flexible uses for leisure, which could facilitate in that future if we could get that commercially viable outcomes.
Chair, I wonder whether it's worth providing feedback for future applications for future developments to include an indoor swimming offer.
I was thinking as well as I went through, looking at the response from sports unions suggesting that the number of homes suggested a demand for, I think they obviously have a means of calculating it, they talk about 0.9 swimming pools. And I was also thinking about the provision of pools across the borough and demand for those pools. Perhaps again, at the risk of keeping everything on the offices, could the provision of swimming pools and swimming facilities across the borough be something that we come back to as a committee, perhaps in one of our Friday morning sessions separately, just to understand a bit more about how new developments could support that access to swimming facilities across the borough?
I will say, well, councillor, there's nothing that without a swimming pool in the future phase, so
Yeah.
there's nothing that will prevent it coming forward.
That's very useful. I do think as a piece of feedback to the design panel, perhaps thinking specifically about, as this is a new town centre, maybe to think about facilities in general and provisional facilities should be included in the feedback, such as swimming pools.
And I think John's final question was about wind and wind mitigation, is that right?
There's also, can I just come back briefly to put about public realm, because you'd be pleased to know that in the section 106, point 10.7 of section 106 already requires all public realm, including the dockside, will be kept open to the public at all times, with limited exceptions for maintenance, emergencies, etc. So there is an obligation in there.
Thank you very much
Forgive me
for
for
that.
not being quicker on. And then in terms of your question about wind mitigation, obviously this application is partly in detail, partly in outline. The detail has been subject to a very extensive wind mitigation testing that's part of the detailed design. The outline, there have been some kind of cursory wind tests, but we need to do that again at what's called reserve matter stage when we get to the detail. You've also got condition B67 on page 209 about details of wind mitigation, which have to be submitted and approved before we can occupy any building.
Supplementary question, Chair?
Just one.
Just one. Can I ask what design, can you give details of what kind of design mitigations would you install in a development like this?
In respect of wind, so, well, primary and macro scale, we orientated the streets, which are primarily east, west, north, south, and predominantly southwest wind direction. So start there. As Chris says, each block is then effectively tested in terms of the relationship to the building, narrowness of streets, orientation. And then you start looking at that sort of specific building angles relative to each other, how your balconies are shaped, how windows are shaped. So we tend to start at that macro level, work down to the plot, overall orientation helps, and then you look at the building designs relative to each other. And you'll see a lot in the design guide as to how buildings relate to each other in streets, how streets widen out, how they narrow down, relief points in the streets. And that will add to what Chris talked about in the overall game.
And the public realm, so the placement of where trees go, where the footpath is, all those things also get tested and tweaked.
Thank you. Before I move on to Councillor Griffith, since John did ask a question first about commercial space, I wondered if I could just follow on from that and perhaps ask officers. I can obviously see the plan for creating some food and drink uses, especially kind of around the dock, but I was really surprised by the quantity of food and beverage usage that was being proposed. And I noted on pages, I think 102 and 104 of our papers, we're talking about a condition. I mean, in particular, the comparison to the square meterage compared to, say, Westfield felt really quite overwhelming and something that had the potential to kind of skew the provision of other stuff across the borough. Do you think that the conditions that you've got here are sufficient to protect what we have going on elsewhere?
Sure, I'm happy to answer this question. The conditions operate in two ways. So first, they cap the total quantum of non-residential floor space under each buffer zone, so the applicant cannot exceed what has been approved This is secured under the condition 70. Second, they required applicant to provide an updated floor space breakdown of early phases under each reserved matter application. So if any individual use, such as retail and food beverage, exceeds the specific limits, additional assessments such as retail impact or marketing evidence must be provided before the approval is granted. So this mechanism gives the council full control over both the amount and the distribution of non-residential uses, including retail and food beverage, over the implementation period of the scheme. And this mechanism also ensures the occupancy of the early phases to be monitored before any further non-residential floor space are developed at the later phases. And so that the development can effectively function as a local center without compromise the existing or emerging local town center everything else in the future.
Thank you for explaining that. That sounds really important. Forgive me, sorry.
No,
Councillor
no rush.
Rickles.
Right, okay, I've been looking at pages 48 to 52 background information, and I'd like someone to assure me that the redrafting of the issues we had, ambiguities and problems with last time is all sorted out and it's all proper and everybody's happy with it.
A very good question, thank you. Members will remember that last time we saw this application, we deferred it because of some small inaccuracies in the paper about where the governance lay around the allocation of funding for the bridge. There have been lots of conversations since then, and the papers have been rewritten to accurately reflect the cabinet decision and to show where the Section 106 money is going. And it also accurately reflects our role as a committee. So I'm very happy with the way that's been resolved.
What about our lawyer? Is he happy? Oh, he's disappeared. Oh no, he's not, he's moved to the top.
We also have a lawyer in the room with us.
Yes,
So I trust the officers are also content with the amendments that we've made.
Yes, we have, Chair.
So, Chair, I am the lawyer actually representing the council. So I am happy with the redrafted committee report as it is, particularly paragraph 16 and 17. As you said, it deals with the issue.
It does. Thank you for the clarity on that. I'm going to suggest that we move along the table for members' questions. Councillor Young, I'll go to you, and then I'll move on to Councillors Beckers and Helen.
Thank you very much. I had some questions about non-residential floor space, but it feels like that's been discussed in a bit of detail. Can I ask about the education provision? So I think I had seen reference to, and I can't remember where it is, on page 114 around the demand for primary school places that that the development will yield as being 671 to 729. So even with a full form entry, that still feels like it won't meet the demand, potentially. So it's just worth exploring that, I think. I would like some further assurance around silo D, given that it is outside the boundary line, and whether we think the mitigations that are in there to secure that are important. It would be helpful, I can see some of the changes in the heads of terms, but just a kind of what's changed in relation to what we've been presented with today. And I guess just going back to the question about the non-residential floor space, so really noting the comments around the quantum in the overall scheme. Presumably that flexibility potentially extends to future phases, looking at whether the residential and non-residential mix can change, but I'm also interested in what the parameters are for the detailed phase, because I can see it for the outline commission, but the numbers on the detail would be really helpful.
Should we take those in turn?
Thank you.
So firstly, thank you on the education spaces. We've been working with Newham's education team and your officers really closely on that point. And so obviously education, the kind of child yield doesn't only include school, and that includes capacity in other local schools as well. Yeah, and so we were steered really clearly that kind of as of today, sort of best guesses, I suppose, that a 3 form entry is what this development would need. But there is a scenario that 4 form could become required depending on future child yield, not only within our development but surrounding areas. So the way we've designed the scheme is to design it to enough land for a 4 form entry. The plan is to build a 3-4 entry as of today. But in the 106, roughly midway through the development, we've got a review moment where we agree with your education team and your officers, and it has to be approved by officers, basically whether it should be 3 or 4 FE. That's what we then build. But there is always the land available, which it needs to be 4 FE. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question on the application. Brilliant, thank you. On Silo D, yes, so it's a really, really important heritage asset. You've seen it sits front and centre of so many of our images. It's a really unique and quite amazing building that was not really designed for people, of course it's designed for brain. And so obviously this application, as per Liam's really helpful programme, it's a big application. It's taken some time, for us to discuss it and to get here today. When we submitted the application, we knew we wanted to do something with it, but we weren't really sure what. Okay, and so for sort of quasi-legal reasons I won't really go into, we didn't want to submit an application that then had a building in that we didn't know what we were doing with. Okay, so we deliberately carved out the red line, as you'll have seen, but we've been discussing with your officers, really importantly, Historic England, what the right outcome for that building is. So we want to, from a design perspective, heritage perspective, and use perspective, come to this committee with what we hope will be the right solution. So it's kind of a 3-stage process that we're going through. So firstly, kind of right now, you'll see the scaffolding around the building because we're doing what we call urgent works. So kind of some surveys, some urgent works to the building. We then, this is secured in your 106, going to be submitting a strategy around, we call it the activation strategy, around the kind of the intended use as well as the detailed design. That needs to be submitted and approved. That's a strategy. We'll then, of course, be submitting the actual planning applications and listed building consent applications, which you may choose to come to this committee if you want to, which will then sort of lock in the final design and the final use. We've got some ideas about use, but they're kind of not confirmed at this stage. And then the key point is, hopefully that gets approved and we can build it out, but the 106 includes those kind of milestones that we kind of can't go beyond a certain number of residential units until we're agreeing with strategy, submitting the application, then actually building it out. That kind of the really key point around Silo D for its success is we think it's going to be really important that when we kind of open it to the public, that actually we've got the homes and the public realm around it so that it's actually part of a place, so it'll be successful rather than kind of opening it too early when it's in the middle of a construction site. So the housing kind of restrictions in the 106 link to that place, if that makes sense. So when the residential and public realm around it. If you'll see.
Yeah, no, I was just about to echo. We've got a design team set up. They've already started activation studies and they're waiting on the survey information, which we hope to get soon. And then there's a really in-depth consultation process that we need to go through. It's such a special asset. We want to make sure that we talk to Historic England and also the community. There's been lots of exciting ideas from the community about what could possibly happen. So that's what we'll be busy with in the new year.
I guess what's troubling me is all of that enthusiasm and commitment to it.
Yes.
It's not in the outline. So I'm interested in the rationale for that.
Yes. Yeah. But it is secured in the section 106 by granting conditions and other things we have to do. And I think it's been a really collaborative process with officers to make sure that it's protected and its delivery is within the front end of the development and comes forward in the best way for it to be successful. So I think that all of those requirements are setting it up in the best way here. I understand your point of it being excluded from the red line seems not appropriate. I think this is. And
that's it, just that we submitted this plan application back in November 2022. So at that time, we were really uncertain about exactly what the future was for that building. And because it's a listed building, it didn't feel appropriate to put in an application for it without really any certainty. We need detail. It's about real precision, I think, when you're dealing with listed buildings like this, which is why we've ended up with this strategy. And I'm going to give your officers credit, they've really, really pushed us hard. It's really important for them, it's important for us, and I think the 106 obligations are really robust.
I'm really glad that you raised Silo D because I had that down in my notes as well. Do officers feel content that the way that the limits on the progress of this application really safeguard the fact that Silo D will come forward? Because I guess that's our worry, isn't it? So when you see it's outside the red line, the immediate thought is a worry that it's going to be sort of left behind.
Yes, I'm happy to answer or add something top up what Chris just said. To ensure the delivery of Silo D, the Section 106 agreement contains the binding occupation trigger. This includes they must submit the application and obtain the listed building consent and full planning permission for the Silo D, which includes what the use should be and how they're going to use it before they can occupy the more than, we put here 1,332 homes, which is equivalent to plot 6, plot 1D, 2D, and plot 7, 8. which means once they finish this plot, they must, by the time, they must get the list building consent and the full planning consent for silo D. And
In
then
layperson's terms, then,
Sorry.
does that mean that the applicant can't just pocket all the cash
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the
yeah.
residential
No,
and leave silo D
yeah.
behind?
We can't build any more homes.
No.
Yeah, they can't do it
But
anymore.
could walk away, right? I mean, unlikely, but could.
Well,
That could happen at any point in the process.
It could.
yeah.
I suppose the point for us as a committee, and I'll come back to it later, is about how important heritage and history is in Newham, and particularly how important that is in East London, where the story that has traditionally been told about London has been the story of different parts of London, and people haven't told the stories of East London, because the story here has been the story of working people, and it's been of immigrants, and it's been about communities whose stories traditionally aren't told. So I guess if we could just kind of impress upon you as a committee how important that is to us and how important that is to the people of Newham as well, that we're telling all the different stories about the different parts of Newham, and particularly the story about the docks, which is such an important part of the fabric of what it means to be in Newham.
Thank you.
I think Blossom's
You had two other questions about non-residential floor space and the kind of flexibility there, including what it meant for the detailed phase one.
So what's in the detail component, and I guess, again, it's probably a question for officers on the conditionality of that, but I'm particularly interested in the commercial strategy and when that will come forward.
Can I turn your attention on the agenda item from the page 211, which is condition D70, which includes a wonderfully complicated area table, but it is the best way to explain it. So if you let me know once you've arrived there.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very small.
Yeah, it's quite small.
Yeah.
It's, I'm trying to rush to my glasses. So if you can see that table, on the top of the table, it says DZ1, DZ2, DZ3, getting kind of green in the version I've got. So DZ1 is development zone 1. Okay? And so that's basically the detailed component. If you then look on the left-hand side, those are the uses, and this is where the flexibility comes in. And if you, obviously you'll see the majority of development zone 1, there's a lot of residential floor space there. But there's also, if you scroll down, importantly, what we call Mills Quarter flexible workspace. It's probably the key one to draw your attention to. And so you can see there that within that kind of grouping, there's the potential for office use, learning and non-residential institutions, research and development. So it's very deliberately a range of employment generating uses to build in flexibility for the Millennium Mills building and the employment buildings. Just to more you can say on the flexibility and the strategy for it, but that's kind of how it's worked out, if that makes sense.
Because it's predominantly the Millennium Mills building.
It's Millennium Mills building, and there's two plots, two employment plots.
It's the Millennium Mills Quarter, the new buildings which are associated with that.
Yeah.
So we are incredibly focused on making sure that the right tenants come to the Mills building and making sure that there's a mix of jobs and a mix of opportunities for people. So that's why that flexible use is very important. If there's an education provider that wants to come, if there's a more typical office space, to make sure there's flexibility to respond to what we hope will be an incredibly rich mix of people coming to occupy that building. What I think is really important about today is that the clarity for those occupants as to what the rest of the master plan will be, that hopefully the decision tonight will give that clarity, as well as the bridge delivery, because we know that those uses are supported by better transport connections and better connections across to the Elizabeth line. So we're hoping that the mix of all those things will help, I suppose, cement the tenant map, if you like, about why they should come to the Mills, and we'll see some real traction and some excitement to this really special building.
Just at one point on the Mills building, that's okay. So it's in the detail components. It's one of those buildings actually got planning permission kind of already from this committee approving the phase 1 RMA, and it's by Sterling Prize winning architect AHMM. So you will have seen some of the images, but it's a really great design solution for the longevity of that building as well.
And I think, Blossom, that you also asked if we could just have a brief summary of the most recent updates to the update paper. Is that right?
Yes,
the final
correct.
question.
So the appendix here is the heads of terms. Unfortunately, it didn't print in colour, otherwise you see some nice red lines going through
I
what's
can see
changed.
some lines.
Yeah, so this is largely the same as what you've had in the report. And in fact, it's the same as what the update report for the last committee. So you probably can look closely and find the lines, but I think generally speaking, this has not changed very much, but for completeness, give you this latest copy. We do have Brian here who helped draft these heads of terms, so if you have any questions or Brian, if you want to-
Yeah, there's just one matter which I would like to point out, and apologies for pointing out this out at this stage. There is unfortunately a missing page in our copy that contains paragraphs 3.15 to 3.26 heads of terms, which happily are the same as reported in Appendix 2 of the agenda, the report pack today. So in respect to paragraph 315 to 326, unfortunately, we'll have to refer to Appendix 2 rather than to this document. But what we can do after the meeting is to circulate a correct copy of this document.
That would be helpful, thank you. Colleagues, I'm aware time is ticking on, but I'm also aware this is a very important application and there are members who haven't had a chance to address their questions yet. Councillor Beckles.
Thanks, Chair. My question is around the employment and the 50% of operational roles. As you all know, Newham's had quite a large scale of developments. We've had skilled up apprentices who have now been qualified as project managers and other roles within the construction industry. Just out of those 50% of operational roles, I'm not expecting the applicants to know how those jobs are segmented within what they provide, but if they can make a commitment, or whether it's within the heads of terms, that more jobs such as project managers and more higher skilled roles are actually allocated to Newham residents. And my second question is around the children's play space. It's vague that around, say, the proposals include suitable provision, that's on page 140. I do think we should provide good play space and it should be accessible. Sure, we will name examples of play space and new developments which are just collections of logs, on top of each other, or a nice outdoor gym. I think this development is a landmark, and if further approved, it could actually change the character and tone of the area. And I think play space is a very important part of that, and that ties into families coming to the area as well. So a commitment again about play space and providing something that goes somewhat above suitable provision, and actually it's not just policy compliant, but it's actually exemplar.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond, I'm going to suggest that we take your questions as
Yeah,
well.
my question is around NHS facilities, and the reason I say this, it's always written in small letters on all of our applications. And neighbouring developments, currently, where I've been canvassing with members, the number one complaint I get is no NHS facilities. And it puts a big strain on facilities further down Canning Town. So what guarantee are you going to give us here? And I'll say this to our officers as well, that we need to make sure that when applications come to us, that we're told about NHS facilities. It's always written in small letters, and we're never told. And when the applications come through, or we have large developments come in, there's very little or lack of NHS facilities for residents there, and it just puts a strain everywhere else around you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I perhaps ask the applicants to respond initially to the questions about jobs and employment and play space?
Absolutely. So thank you for your question, Councillor. So yeah, we've got around 8,000 potentially operational phase jobs. And the Section 106 commitment is to target a minimum of 50% of those as being local for Newham residents. So that's potentially 4,000 jobs. That includes highly skilled jobs as well, right? Kind of not just the construction jobs, but kind of through the whole operational phase process. Maybe I'll go suggest in terms of what's happening so far on site, because you've got some more kind of granular examples.
I suppose I want to thank you for the call to do more than just what's in the Section 106 requirements, because we pride ourselves on that's what we do, that's our DNA, and that is why we work for the company that we work on, the projects that we work on. On plot 6, we've had 124 local jobs on the first 106 homes, and we've had 4 apprenticeships. One of the apprentices from them now works within our construction division, so he is a project manager. So we have, I suppose, right through that exact example that you were talking about, we have had someone in our team that's now a really important part of our team that's come from Newham, and we're really proud of that. We look forward to how much more we can do for the rest of the scheme. So we agree, and we will do more.
Just one point in the heads of terms as well. There's a kind of an option in there for Leamington Council to develop a kind of a Silvertown specific kind of employment strategy, because it's such a big scheme over many years. So we thought rather than it just being kind of just kind of contributions to our new works, which we are still doing. There's a significant contribution to our new works, so we're still doing that. But it's also the ability to have a kind of a more Silvertown specific body, that's probably led by Silvertown Partnership, but with maybe the council on the board of that.
Correct, and that's, I suppose, to do with the scale of Silvertown, but also the scale of change happening within the Royal Docks, and the fact that there is a lot of development, a lot, those high-skilled project manager example jobs. There's a lot more, even, outside of the Silvertown footprint as well. So there's real value that could be captured. So we're incredibly focused on trying to capture it.
Your question on place space, I think we totally agree with you. Again, this is a big development, lots of children of all age groups, and so we've tried to kind of cater for that in the approach to the different place spaces.
Yeah.
I'll maybe let Jason talk a bit more about the quality of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the design guide is quite clear on distribution of space, place space, distance from doorstep for different age groups, what space has to be contained on site. Across the development, in the design guide, we describe the types of play space, distribution and play within it. And then in the design guide, we set the ambitions for each of the different types of play space. So I think it's a very comprehensive picture, both in terms of what we're providing for different age groups, where it's situated, and the quality we expect within it. I will do one thing, is also point to Lend-Lease's play space, Elephant Park, which has been absolutely phenomenal and hugely successful. I think we see play as one of the big glues of the creative community.
Then your question on the NHS. Yeah, look, you're absolutely right. We might have up to sort of 14,000 residents here, so they're going to need GP facilities. And so we've been in very detailed discussions with the NHS. It's set out in a Section 106 commitment in your report. So there's a kind of a financial equivalent amount of 2.8 million that's set aside specifically for this. And there's kind of two options in the 106, with the final option needing to be agreed with the NHS and approved by your council. So our preference is very much on-site delivery, so on-site GPs, etc., up to an equivalent value of 2.8 million, which would give us enough GPs. There's also the ability, if the NHS think it's the right outcome, to provide healthcare facilities in the local area, but have to be in the local vicinity. So again, and then we will basically pay 2.8 million for that. So it's, the starting point is on-site. There's an option for on-site, but it's up to ultimately to the council to agree that come later on.
Chair, can we make a note of that? Because obviously I am concerned that neighbouring developments don't have no health facilities, and I drive along Silvertown Way anyway, and there is lack of health facilities for new developments. So we need to make that clear to this committee today, that that's one thing that we need to really hammer down on, make sure that any new development has NHS facilities for residents.
Thank you, that's a really important point. I'm going to suggest, colleagues, that we move to the vote. Could I ask perhaps for you to share the officer recommendations on screen? I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but as you can see, the Strategic Development Committee is asked to note the update report, resolve to agree the reasons for approval, and etc. Can I please ask those in favour to raise their hands? Thank you very much. That is unanimous. Thank you so much for coming this evening. We have got a really full agenda, so I think I'm going to have to move on pretty smartly to the next item. I do plan to have a comfort break at some point tonight, but I think probably not right now, unless Councillor Morris, did you want to have a comfort break? In which case, we will have a quick comfort break. It is 19:29. We will have 10 minutes. We'll come back at 19:30.
Very good years when my parents were born.
We'll move back into session if members are ready. Are we back online? I'm just not able to start my video at the moment, Chair. We'll resolve that in a moment. Thank you for bearing with us. Welcome back to tonight's Strategic Development Committee. We're moving on to agenda item 7, which is Timber Yard, Ashburton Terrace in Plaistow. I'd like to invite the applicants to speak to us for up to 5 minutes. As before, I will try to give you a wave and let you know that you just have a minute or so left.
Certainly, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Chair and members. I'm Gary Simpson, the applicant. I'm pleased to be here to speak in support of our proposed scheme. I'm also joined by members of the project team in case there are any questions. As you will recall, we were deferred at the October meeting because of the off-site affordable housing proposal was not clear, and I hope these issues were with the report as well. We are pleased to be back tonight seeking to deliver a high-quality development which comprises new co-live units, contributing to Newham's housing need, new employment floor space, improvements to the public realm, street scene, improvements to biodiversity, and a contribution towards new affordable homes in Newham. The scheme will replace the existing underutilised former Travis Perkins yard. As officers will hear, the scheme is supported by the Planning Authority. At the October committee meeting, members sought further clarity on the affordable housing offer. We've worked closely with officers and BNPP, Newham's appointed viability consultants, to ensure the offer is now fully explained, understood, and hopefully agreed. This guarantees a payment of £1,340,000 to be paid at the commencement of the development. This is based on our current intention to deliver the scheme subject to your planning approval. The sum exceeds surplus identified by the viability consultants and therefore represents the maximum viable financial contribution as ratified by BNPP. Just to re-emphasise, this sum is payable on commencement of the scheme. Your viability consultants also identified that if at some point in the future we choose to sell the completed scheme by way of a company sale, then there could be an additional payment to the borough. We've agreed to this, and this is captured within the Section 106 agreement. The payments have been identified by Newham Council to the maximum viable contribution, ensuring the scheme will be deliverable, whilst providing a significant financial payment towards the affordable housing in the borough. This agreement means that the scheme will be bringing forward 175 co-living units, the equivalent of 97 new homes for Newham. As the officer will explain, this scheme is supported by the London Plan and your local plan. Alongside the co-living accommodation, the scheme proposes 241 square metres of small business workspace, which is double the amount of employment floor space currently on site. The majority of this will be flexible workspace designed for local startups, small and medium-sized businesses. It is envisaged that this will be run and managed by a registered charity, Acme Studios, who are based in London and support local makers and creatives with studio space. The charity has been established since 1972 and provides affordable studio workspace for various creative programs. We are proposing to improve the surrounding public realm and transport infrastructure with new surface treatment, new trees, new planting, including new significant public artwork to be designed within the local design in conjunction with the local community. We have received 10 letters from local business and community groups supporting the application. We commenced the planning process with Newham in July 2023. Since then, we've worked collaboratively with your planning, design and design review panel and priority teams to bring the scheme before you today. In conclusion, we would ask for your support to be able to deliver this high quality scheme and all associated benefits for the borough. And we're here to answer any other questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
That's well within the time allowed. Thank you very much. We do have an objector here who I believe would like to speak. Emily Levy, you're here. Thank you. And I know that you came to the last meeting as well. Thank you for coming back. Could I perhaps just ask the applicants to vacate the table for a moment so that Emily can speak?
It's okay.
If you're happy to do that, that's absolutely great. Thank you. You also have up to 5 minutes.
I won't need that, but thank you very much. So hi, my name is Emily Lay. I just wanted to, I understand that there's a recommendation to approve the planning permission application today. And I found the process last time I was here incredibly helpful and useful. I did raise some concerns with the application. As a resident of Opus Studios, which is situated in between Plastow Road and Ashburton Terrace. I just wanted to log for the records that on Monday, I was contacted at home at about 11 o'clock. Someone saying they were from the developer had visited my home address, and they said that they had sent me a letter and had asked for me to give them that letter back. I did have the letter, but I hadn't had a chance to read it properly because I've been very busy at work. I was in the middle of a work call, so I didn't have time to question the reasoning. So I just handed the letter back to them. But I had taken a copy of it also, and I noted that in the letter that I had scanned but not paid any attention to, that they tried to address my concerns that I had raised in the meeting last time. I wasn't expecting to be contacted, and then a couple of hours later, I had the postman knock on my door to say that he had been contacted about trying to retrieve the letter also. I was just wondering, whether my personal details were publicly available as part of this process, and why the urgency to retrieve the letter, and because it just seemed very odd. So that's all I wanted to share today.
That does seem strange. Thank you for raising that. And obviously we have the submission that you made to the consultation process as well. We normally move on to members' questions after we've heard all of the officers' presentation as well. But I wondered if officers were able to let us know whether or not Emily's details would have been shared with the applicant.
It wouldn't be shared by me though. There's two options though. If they submit comments via the online portal, the address of the objector or commenter is displayed, but not the person's details or address. Another way is if Emily contacted me by email, I would have uploaded the email, but only for my viewing, not for anyone else, and I would have logged her address onto our own database, and that wouldn't be publicly available either.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Just to say that through land registry records or electoral data, names and addresses may be publicly available, sort of not outside of the planning process too.
Yeah, no, okay, understood. In which case, thank you, Emily, for coming to speak to us again. Can I suggest that we move on to the officer report, please?
Chair, may I? It strikes me because, we can see addresses published in the report, of course. They're not linked to names. And I note, in general, while there are generally lots of responses to consultation processes, we then see very few letters in objection or support. And I wonder if the publication of addresses in reports as a matter of record is part of that challenge, and whether there's anything we can do more generally to not to redact that information.
The location of where objections come from or letters of support are material. It weighs against or for applications if immediate neighbours are affected, more so than members outside of the people who make representations outside of the borough. So it is material, and it would be for any committee, in England to disclose locations of where objections or letters all come from, but names aren't included both on the public access website or within the report.
Perhaps this is something we could come back to.
Yes.
I'd be keen to know whether we could maybe capture that proximity by sharing postcode rather than the full address. But then I remember not that long ago when actually names and addresses were both in the public council planning documents, which didn't strike me as being desirable either. This is something that we could perhaps come back to.
Lovely.
Would you mind making a note of that for us, Shirley, so we don't lose the point?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I do wonder whether there's something for the applicant to respond to in relation to what's been raised also.
Yes, I might come back to that maybe after we've heard the officer report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Good evening. This is item 7, which seeks planning permission at the Timber Yard, Ashburton Terrace. As you're aware, this application was deferred in October 2025 in order to provide clarity to members in respect of the affordable housing assessment and the heads of terms related to that. I'd also like you to note the minor updates and update report, which also show a few minor errors in relation to that. The site is a vacant former timber yard located nearby Plaistow Underground Station. The site was occupied by Travis Perkins until 2022. The site is bounded to the north by the railway line, serving Plaistow Station, the southwest by Ashburton Terrace, and Grasmere Terrace to the southeast. The images on this slide show an aerial context of the site, view from the southeast, and a view of the site from the junction of Ashburton Terrace and Grasmere Road. Planning permission is sought for the redevelopment of the site to deliver Part 9, Part 7, Part 6 building that will comprise of 241 square metres of flexible commercial floor space at ground floor level and 6,324.92 square metres of co-living floor space at 1st to 8th floor levels. Other works include landscaping and public road improvements to both the application site and the adjoining public highway along Ashburton Terrace. That's just a visual. The key considerations for this would be the principle of development, quality of accommodation, affordable housing, urban design, neighbouring amenity, transport servicing and waste, and other considerations. So for this application, the principle of development comprises 3 different aspects: development within a designated LMUA, the erection of a tall building, and the delivery of a co-living development. The proposed development will provide an increase in quantity and quality of internal employment floor space within the local mixed-use area from 110 square metres to 240.5 square metres. This is considered acceptable and in line with the business and employment policies of both the London and Newham local plan. Condition is to be attached upon approval for the Class E uses to be restricted to employment-generating functions only, as well as Class B. On the subject of the development being a tall building, whilst the site is not located in a designated tall buildings area, development of a tall building is supported. This was subject to review by design review panel as well as townscape value assessments being submitted for our review. Large-scale purpose-built shared living or co-living is a type of non-self-contained housing that is generally made up of at least 50 private individual rooms, communal spaces and facilities. Co-living differs from self-contained housing, HMOs, hostels and residential institutions. The use class of a LSPB-SL is of sui generis and provides accommodation for a single-person households who cannot or choose not to live in self-contained homes or HMOs. Whilst LSPB-SL provides an additional housing option for some people, it is not considered to meet the ongoing needs of households in London. However, LSPB-SL does contribute to housing choice and is counted towards housing supply. This is on a ratio of 1.8 co-living units to 1 conventional see-through unit. Therefore, in this case, 175 rooms would equate to 95 conventional see-through units. Policy H16 of the London Plan contains criteria for the accessibility of co-living developments. Some of this criteria include contributing towards mixed inclusive neighbourhoods located in an area that is well connected by public transport, walking and cycling, as well as tenure, tenancy and management considerations. To give a recap, co-living rooms represent 2.9% of the resulting housing stock of the Plaistow North Ward. This is considered by officers to contribute to a balanced and mixed economy and not skewed towards one particular type of tenure of housing. Further consideration is also given towards wider choice that can reduce pressure on converting existing family homes into smaller residential units or HMOs. The development will require to be under single management, have a minimum tenancy length of 3 months minimum, and provision of a management plan. So in conclusion, the principle of development is supported. Okay, affordable housing. Policy H16 of the London Plan expects co-living developments to deliver a cash in lieu contribution towards affordable conventional C3 housing at the equivalent of 35% of the number of co-living units. In the same manner as determining affordable housing for conventional residential schemes, co-living is also subject to a viability tested group. Following the submission of a viability assessment, which has been reviewed externally, the affordable housing offer is twofold. To be clear, this London Plan policy specifically only allows for the payment of cash in lieu and not on-site affordable housing. The provision of affordable housing would fail to meet the minimum target of 35% as set out in the LSPB-SL developments, as required by Policy H16 of the London Plan. However, policy acknowledges the need to consider the viability of the scheme and allows applicants to provide small contributions where robustly justified via a viability analysis. The applicant submitted a viability appraisal in their application submission. The viability appraisal concluded that the proposed development would generate a deficit of 4,223,001 against the viability benchmark. The council appointed BNP Paribas to independently review the viability appraisal and advise the LPA on its robustness. After several negotiations, BNP states that the considered proposal could provide 2.25 million if it were to be sold as a special purpose vehicle. An SPV is a legal entity created for a limited purpose. Developments put into SPVs to isolate financial risk. SPVs can result in lower funding costs, predominantly through stamp duty savings, as the entity is being purchased and not the asset itself. The applicant states that they were not intending on selling the site as an SPV and would either look to sell as an asset or keep the property and offer a payment in lieu of 1.34 million in the circumstance. Officers discussed this at depth with BNP Paribas, who considered that this would be the maximum that could be provided in this circumstance. Given this, officers considered that the Section 106 must capture for all potential avenues. Therefore, the affordable housing offer is twofold, allowing for a 1.34 million payment made upfront, regardless of if the site is sold, and then a clause allowing for the capture of an additional 1.1 million in the event that any first sale of the site is undertaken as an SPV. This clause will remain unless and until any first sale has been undertaken. An additional obligation will require the developer to submit annual ownership reports to the council to ensure that we can monitor this effectively and recoup any additional funds if such circumstance arises. This obligation would also fall away at completion of any first sale. In percentage terms, the 1.34 million would equate to 7.4% of affordable housing contribution based on 175 units. That is the equivalent of 13 co-living units. In the event of an additional 1.1 million is secured on the sale of the site, then this figure increases to 10.8% based on 175 units, equivalent to 19 co-living units. Whilst the provision is under the desired threshold of 35%, consideration is given towards advice of the council's independent viability consultant, who advises that this is the maximum reasonable figure that can be provided, and the delivery of the units is the equivalent of 97 residential units. Early and late stage reviews are in place, with the late stage review being triggered should the development not reach practical completion within 42 months and occupied within 45 months. Policy of accommodation. Policy H16 requires communal facilities and services that are provided to be sufficient and meet the requirements of the intended number of residents and offer at least convenient access to a communal kitchen, outside communal amenity space, internal communal amenity space, laundry and drying facilities, concierge, bedding and linen. Officers consider the internal communal amenities delivered acceptable in terms of both quantity and quality. In terms of the individual accommodation, each private room will meet the space standards for LSPB-SL of between 18 and 27 square metres. Accessible rooms will also meet the space standards of between 28 and 37 square metres, and each room is considered to receive adequate levels of daylight, sunlight, ventilation, outlook and privacy, as well as accommodate a double bed, a desk with worktop space, a bedside cabinet, and wardrobe and seating dining area. Overall, the quality of accommodation is supported. In terms of urban design, the height, scale, materiality and appearance of the proposed development is considered acceptable. Conditions are recommended to secure further design details, including material specifications, detailed drawings and hard and soft landscaping details. The development is also supported in regard to crime prevention and fire safety, and the scheme was reviewed at both the design review panel and the design review panel chairs workshop. Overall design of the development is supported. The application was accompanied with a daylight sunlight assessment, which demonstrates that the majority of adjoining properties would not experience adverse reductions to daylight and sunlight as a result of the development. It is acknowledged that some properties would face tangible reductions. However, consideration is given to the context of the urban environment, the flexibility of the VRE criteria, and the weighing up against the delivery of residential accommodation. The development will not result in adverse losses of outlook, including that of overbearing and enclosure. There will be some mutual overlooking typical of urban environments. However, there will not be direct views into neighbouring habitable windows. Amenity impacts through the construction period will be overseen and mitigated through a demolition and construction management plan secured by condition. The site is in a PTAL of 5, which indicates good access to public transport. On-street parking would be restricted by legal agreement, which is also a requirement of policy H16 of the London Plan. The quantum of cycling parking provided is also supported by the council's transport officers. The application also includes highway works and public realm improvements, which will be secured by section 278 works, again secured by the legal agreement. In addition to that, the quantum of refuse storage is considered acceptable, in which the management of such is covered by the operational management plan secured by planning obligation. Overall, transport servicing and waste is supported. And just to wrap up with some other considerations, the development will deliver a carbon offsetting contribution of around £22,500, has a BREEAM rating of excellent, an urban greening factor score of 0.4, B&G increase of 111.43%, and will also provide an Epping Forest contribution as well as employment contributions of around £130,000. So in conclusion, the scheme supporting all other material considerations. So over conclusions, without going into it again, high quality design public home improvements, providing increased enhanced employment floor space to a designated LMUA. Whilst not a conventional housing product, it will contribute to the delivery of housing in the borough. It would include a financial contribution towards affordable housing, and subject to conditions and planning obligations, the impact of development will be managed and mitigated. Therefore, officers consider the scheme acceptable. So, to recommend, the Strategic Development Committee is asked to note the contents of the committee report, the update report, and resolve to 1, agree the reasons for approval as set out in the committee report and update report, and 2, delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant planning permission, subject to the completion of legal agreement under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, based on the heads of terms identified in Appendix 2 of the committee report as updated in the update report, and conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the committee report as updated in the update report. And number 3, if within 6 months of the resolution, the legal agreement has not been completed, the Director of Planning and Development is delegated powers to refuse planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to questions and comments. I have a couple for the applicant first. I'm aware that we've inherited a couple of co-living sites from land that was previously determined by the LLDC, but I think this is the first product of this kind that we've had at this committee. And as such, I think it'd be interesting for us to understand a little bit more about it. I wondered whether you felt that the condition that tenancies would be a minimum of 3 months was really enough to kind of build up a community there, rather than effectively a sort of group of serviced apartments, like a sort of long stay hotel. And I also wondered, given that I know you assured us before that you were keen on managing this facility yourselves, whether you had a kind of an idea for how you would manage the facility in order to encourage a sense of community, both between the residents and also relationships between the residents and the other communities that surround them.
Sure, thank you for that. Could I just defer to James, who's a specialist?
Hello, good evening. The first one was on the length of tenancy of 3 months. What we actually find is that once people move into our properties, they tend to stay for a long time. The 3 months gives people flexibility to be able to have a choice over how long they want to stay there. But we find that the average stay is well over a year. So that helps us and them to be able to build the community. The type of tenant that we typically have is a typically younger, working professional, working in Newham and across East London, and they are looking to experience the whole of the Newham experience. So it's important for us to be able to make sure that we give them a good residence and a good sense of purpose. We're specifically not running a hotel. It's not a long stay anonymous apartment. So our schemes are fully staffed with 24-hour security, and we make a major effort to ensure that there are daily, weekly, monthly events for the residents, and that can include things like making sure that the social spaces actually have things going on in the evening, whether it's in the cinema room, whether it's watching the film or the game, making use of the communal kitchens. We have cooking classes, we have demonstrations, using the co-working areas, which our residents do typically use during the day. In the evenings, we also have discussion groups, and we have classes to bring people together. We have our gym, and we don't just leave it as a set of machines. We make sure that classes are being run there, whether it's actually gym classes or whether it's outside instructors coming in for yoga and Pilates. So we make sure that there's something going on every day, week, month, to bring people together and to get them to make sure that people just aren't sitting in their rooms, to actually join in and be part of the community.
That's helpful, thank you. And that sounds as if you're already running these kind of developments elsewhere. Is that in London?
We have previously run co-living schemes in London, in Tower Hamlets, and they've been very successful.
Thank you. Colleagues. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. So I actually live in the ward, and I actually go by Ashburton Terrace and Gracemere Road quite often. And actually, one of the things that I've noticed about those particular roads is they are inactive spaces and attract antisocial behaviour. So I guess my comment would be, I'm actually quite happy that there's now a development there that would utilise that space and would deter natural surveillance, would deter antisocial behaviour. I just wanted to ask, there were concerns about possible antisocial behaviour. Can you just clarify what secured by design elements would be incorporated into the 11 to deter antisocial behaviour and crime?
Thank you. Yeah. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I can certainly answer that. So there's been a consultation with Met Police Secure by Design officers. There's a condition in place requiring assessment and compliance with Secure by Design certification in terms of Secure by Design. There were some comments in relation to the Northern Access route, which has been refined and amended and addressed in the ongoing iterative design process in connection with the scheme. But we've really paid a lot of attention to the design to ensure there's passive surveillance and the real presence, and the lighting strategy, approach to landscaping will ensure that the sort of antisocial behaviour that you're talking about can really be mitigated through the development. So I completely agree. At the moment, it's a long-standing vacant timber yard which attracts antisocial behaviour on the two adjacent streets. And presence and the sense of surveillance associated with the scheme, as mentioned, 24-hour staff on site will really help address those concerns.
Thank you. Blossom.
Thank you. I had 3 questions, if I may. There's some very detailed outlining of the daylight sunlight assessments, and I appreciate the points around the levels of that. I mean, I would observe that, you know, given the way lots of us live now, assuming that that if there is a reduction in terms of bedrooms, lots of people are using bedrooms for work. So I wouldn't make an assumption that it's not a daylight consideration. And I particularly noted that in relation to some of the objections. So the impact on neighbours and whether there was anything that could be done to mitigate that would be the first kind of question. I noticed a couple of comments in relation to the employment space and potential for all of the amenity space to be treated as employment. So I wondered if that could be clarified. I know Whately very well, and so I'm interested in what the provision of that makerspace looks like in a bit more detail. And I wondered if you could comment on the points that the other speaker, Emily, has raised today in relation to her experience, because I was quite disturbed to hear that.
Absolutely. Do you want me to start with that?
Please.
So we had a temporary member of staff in the office on Friday, and there was 5 letters that I needed to send, one of which was a letter where I'd signed a confidentiality agreement, and they told me that they'd put the wrong letter in the wrong envelope. So I had written a letter to address some, just to take on board her concerns last time, but the junior suggested that that was where the letter went. So I just recalled all the posts that went out that day. So it wasn't specific to the objector. It was, I recalled all letters that went out that day because I couldn't be assured which letter had the confidential information in, because I'd signed an exclusivity agreement. So it wasn't relating to this site per se. It was related to all posts that went out that day.
Okay, thank you. Would it have been prudent to then update residents who you had written to? Just
there was
to
only one letter went out to a resident. That was the only one that I did that day. So I knew it was only one letter to Newham and various other letters to other addresses in London.
I see.
So it wasn't, there was 5 letters that went out that day, all on separate matters, not only one letter to do with this. But I couldn't be assured as to which envelope had the information in, so I recalled all post that day. So the post office does do a recall service. If you send stuff by registered post, you can recall everything. So it wasn't meant to intimidate or do anything. It's just I couldn't be sure where the letters had the information, so I recalled all posts that went out that day.
Okay, but the upshot sounds like it has been received as intimidation. So
I fully understand that, but I never had an opportunity to explain that, and I didn't know how I would explain it to someone. So I just recalled all posts that day without giving any explanation. So I can perceive how that would look, and I'm extremely embarrassed about that. And I will do whatever I can to make the applicant feel comfortable that there was nothing involved in it. So I'm happy to address that afterwards.
I think that would be helpful. I think we're concerned as a committee as well that residents really need to feel able to contribute to planning consultations.
100%.
And they need to feel.
In relation to the lady who objected, she objected in very positive terms, in terms of her objection last time. It was, we only had one objection. So it was nothing to do with the objection whatsoever and nothing to do with that. And if it was an email, it would have been a lot easier to recall emails, But unfortunately, in this instance, that particular day, we did everything by post. So it was nothing to do with.
I think I would just encourage you on behalf of the committee to try to address that and to try to address the misunderstanding and the feeling of unhappiness that's been caused by it as well, which I think we could all understand.
100%. And I just apologise for that.
Your other comments, Blossom, did you want those to be addressed by officers initially? In particular, I also made a note about wanting to know a bit more about daylight and sunlight and overshadowing nearby properties.
So in terms of the daylight and sunlight, overall, the daylight sunlight concluded that there wouldn't be at loss or significant losses. There is a couple of flats at the first floor level. I do want to clarify my point in terms of bedrooms. I didn't want to throw away and say that bedrooms aren't useful spaces. It's more, I do recognise it as a habitable space, but maybe compared to like a living room, kitchen, dining area.
But you've written in the report that because it's a bedroom, the daylight implication is less of a concern.
I would say more of a less of a concern compared to a living room, kitchen, dining area, just because of, I take your point about people using their bedrooms out to work from home, but because the principal activity of a bedroom is nighttime activities and sleeping. If in the balance of the application and comparative to the more principal habitable spaces, there will be of a, not less concern, but more of a smaller concern compared to the principal spaces that are used more during the daytime.
Can I ask a bit about the proximity of the proposed building to existing buildings as well? Because I know that was another concern that some of the consultation responses had.
So I think it was the separation distance, I think, between the buildings that face onto Plaza High Street. I think it's Opus Studio, and I can't recall the name of the neighbouring building. I think it is approximately
10 or 11.
I was going to say 10 or 11 meters, yeah, I thought it was that way, didn't want to get it wrong. Because of that, and that being approximately 10 to 11 meters separation distance from.
Yeah, that's small, isn't it? But yeah, carry on, sorry.
Okay, so yes, so I do take that there's concerns with the separation distance as well as the stories and the number of heights. But in the balance of the application with what is being delivered, the results of the daylight and the sunlight analysis, the design of the development, which shows that there isn't mutual direct overlooking between any of the habitable spaces, as well as also there are improvements as a result of the development in terms of the site itself and to the adjoining public highway. So whilst there is going to be an impact on outlook and what people see from their windows, there is the argument that it would be also a better environment to look out onto in comparison to what is existing.
And is the site currently empty as well? It's currently vacant, isn't it? If it was a yard, does it have anything building on it?
It is vacant, and the last that I recall, I did do a site visit to see myself before the last committee, and the structure is still there, but just the frame of it, and if I recall, the metal cladding has been taken off that, so it is basically an empty plot.
Okay. So I know from previous applications as well, it can be, the impact on neighbours can be difficult when empty plots are built on, because there obviously is an impact.
Yeah, so it's there will be a change in outlook, but officers don't consider it to be an adverse change, and that's also balanced from the continuity of an untimely on-camp site for years to come.
Thank you. Were there further questions or comments from members, please? James.
Just on the construction management plan, and just making sure that it's as robust as possible and has enough mitigations, because as you said, it is a current structure that is there. Local residents do not pass. I think there's still an active alleyway next to it. If there are blockages and the highway is obstructed by any sort of vehicles, that we just have a transport plan that helps mitigate, it keeps traffic flowing and people walking past that development as easily and accessible as possible.
Yes, so as a standard, the DCMP that's been put on condition, they would have to know how the construction works and how both public highway in terms of the pavement and also the roads itself would be maintained. And that's also taken into account, I know that some of the objections from neighbours, because they do have access to their rear parking within the building, which is access from Ashburton Terrace. That also covers that. Another point is that this DCMP, once it is submitted, it will also be in consultation with TfL.
DCMP.
So the Demolition and Construction Environmental Management Plan.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should clarify that. At least stop using acronyms. That's also in consultation with TfL, who also want to have a look at the construction impacts, I think, for two reasons. One, because it's near the main road, and two, because it's near the district and Hammersmith and City line and their assets along that.
Sorry, Blossom, I was aware there was a previous question that you'd asked, which I've lost track of while we were coming back to your other
Not at
queries.
all. So just around the employment space calculation, which seems to include the amenity space, or has that changed? I will find it, but give me a moment.
Chair, if I may, there's a member of the audience that wishes to raise a question. I'm not sure they're allowed to.
No, I'm really sorry. This part of the agenda is just for committee members to raise questions. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Blossom, could you find the bit that you're referring to? Are you happy for us to come back to you?
Yes, of course, absolutely.
James.
I was just a supplementary about, I guess, the applicant being a considerate constructor.
Yes.
And will all the necessary information and contacts be up so that, in case residents have any other issues, that they can contact you or your site manager if there's any issues, because I'm sure objectors would love to have some conversations with you at some point.
Yes, our main our main contractor will be signed up and will adhere to the considerate contractor scheme. with full reporting and full on-site contact details as required, yes.
Okay.
And I'm sure given that John lives so close by, if you were granted permission, he could feed back to the committee about whether that was accessible. Blossom, have you had any luck?
Yeah, so the reference is on page 274.47 and 48.
Sorry, that's page 274.
It's point 47.
Point 47 and 48.
47.
Paragraphs 47 and 48. What was the question about?
Just clarification over what is being considered as employment law space.
So as it existing, because it was the Travis Perkins timber yard and the activity happened within the structure, but also within what is now the external rear yard, because that's where the transactions happened, the timber and material was picked up and the employment happened over the entirety of the site, not just the internal structure. We as officers considered the measurement of the whole site. With the proposed, there is an increase in the internal floor space, and whilst it is not at the same level as the site in its entirety, we also consider the quality of the employment force that is being delivered, as well as the flexibility, because it does have internal changes. So depending on who the occupier of the client might be, it can switch and change, which will also be more conducive to hopefully more people filling up.
Did you have a supplementary question?
I think so, and just a question to the applicant really. So you've mentioned ACME as your preferred workspace provider. I appreciate this is less of a planning consideration, but just in terms of the security of that as that maker workspace, is that a long-term arrangement that you're considering with ACME? Is it just now? Is it?
Well, ACME was involved in the scheme with us in London Borough of Lewisham, and they took a very short-term lease to begin with, but then that extended. So it depends really on them. So, we will make that space available to them, and if they can have demand and want to continue, then they will have the option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the way it's been designed is it's as your officer just alluded, it can be broken into very small units or a bigger. So it's quite flexible, the floor space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm minded to move us towards the vote if there are no objections. Samir, could I ask you to share the recommendation again, please?
Sorry.
Thank you. The committee is asked to note the contents of the update report and resolve to agree the reasons for approval, etc., etc. Can I please ask those in favour to raise their hands? That is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on swiftly, as I always say, people who joined us for the previous application are of course welcome to stay, but we understand you might need to go. We still have quite an agenda ahead of us, so I am going to move on without a break. Agenda item number 8 is 212 Upton Lane in Forest Gate, also commonly known as the Old Spotted Dog. Could I ask the applicant team, please, to come up if you would wish to address the committee? Okay, no problem. Sorry, applicants for agenda item 8, I've advised you may be here just to answer questions, is that correct? In which case, you're very welcome to come up and take a seat. And we will move on to the officer report, because I don't believe we have any objectors registered to speak tonight. When you're ready, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Item 8 relates to the application site at 212 Upton Lane, Forest Gate. The application site includes a 2-story Grade 2 listed building, which is currently on Historic England's Buildings at Risk register. The site is surrounded by hard standing and occupies an area of approximately 1,940 square meters. The site is located on the northern side of Upton Lane and the western side of Wyatt Road. To the west lies Clapton Community Football Club, separated by Disraeli Walk. The site does not have a specific land use designation for either residential or employment purposes in the local plan. A full plan application and listed building consent for the restoration of the public house and the development of 68 hotel rooms have lapsed as works were not commenced within 3 years. The current proposal consists of 2 linked applications. The full application seeks the renovation of the 15th to 19th century elements of the listed building, following the demolition of various 20th century additions. The works will allow the reinstatement of the building's historic public house function. In addition, the proposal includes the erection of 2 new buildings, blocks A and B, of 3 and 4 stories respectively. These would accommodate a mix of 22 residential units and 14 service apartments. The application also includes associated cycle parking, public realm enhancements, and landscaping works. The second application seeks listed building consent for the proposed works to the Great Two listed building. This slide shows the key visuals of the proposed scheme. A total of 384 consultation letters were sent to neighboring properties in December last year. In summary, the objections to the application relate to loss of daylight sunlight, loss of privacy, noise and disturbance, increased traffic and parking congestions, and antisocial behavior. Reconsultation letters were issued to all neighboring properties by post on 29th of July. The key planning issues which will be covered within this presentation are shown on the slide. All other material planning considerations are comprehensively covered within the committee report. I will now turn to the significance of the listed building and impact on the special character and appearance of the listed building.
Just pause for a second.
The Salted Dock Public House is a Grade 2 listed building, first listed by Historic England in 1967. It has been on the Heritage at Risk Register since 2004 and has remained vacant for a number of years, which has contributed to its ongoing deterioration. The application proposes the removal of the late 20th century extensions that do not positively contribute to the building's significance. In their place, a single-story extension is proposed. The scheme also includes new kitchen and toilet facilities at basement level and the installation of a lift to improve accessibility. Historic England has been consulted and has raised no objection to the proposals. Their support is subject to planning obligations and conditions to ensure that any works to the historic fabric are carried out sensitively. While the works will inevitably cause a degree of harm to the listed building, this harm is assessed as less than substantial. Officers consider that this is outweighed by the public benefits, primarily the opportunity to bring a long vacant heritage asset back into viable active use. Turning to the principle of development, the proposal brings forward a mixed-use scheme comprising public house, hotel, and residential uses. Historic England notes that the site is used as a public house since the early 19th century, shown on Clayton's 1821 map as a dot. Although left vacant, the proposal reinstates the historic function, supporting its original use and ensuring long-term viability.
Yes, you may just pause for one moment. There is still a bit of disturbance from outside. I think if there's some conversation going on about the previous application, they could definitely do that in the foyer.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the interruption. Do carry on, Chloe.
The scheme also proposes 14 hotel rooms, a significant reduction from the previously approved 68. This smaller scale is considered acceptable in principle. The proposed residential use for 22 homes would make a positive contribution towards Newham's 3,280 unit annual target under London Plan Policy H1. Overall, the mix of public house, hotel, and residential uses is supported. Turning to design, the proposal has undergone a thorough design process, including pre-application engagement and the design review panel chair's workshop. The DRB chair confirmed the form, scale, and massing are appropriate and the architectural quality is high. In response to comments, detailed-based studies were submitted and the layout refined to better integrate the service apartment and the pub entrances. Subject to conditions on materials and detailed drawings, officers consider the scheme to achieve a high standard of design. In response to comments from the football club, a number of design changes have been made. First, the layout has been amended so that access to the residential building no longer relies on the Raleigh Walk. Instead, access is now proposed via Wyatt Road. The bin storage for commercial and residential uses are also separated. Second, the orientation of bedrooms has been adjusted. Ground and first floor bedrooms would no longer face the football ground. While some second floor bedrooms remain oriented towards the pitch, officers note that there are other residential properties to the north of the site in similarly close proximity. Overall, these changes improve the scheme's relationship with the football club and its operations. No affordable housing is proposed within this development. BNP Paribas has been commissioned to independently review the applicant's financial viability assessment. Their assessment concluded that the scheme would generate a deficit of approximately £996,000, confirming that it is not currently capable of supporting affordable housing. The proposal, however, seeks to deliver the renovation and reactivation of a Grade 2 listed public house currently on the Heritage at Risk Register with restoration costs of approximately £3.8 million. These works represent a significant heritage benefit and are central to the scheme. Subject to the applicant entering into the necessary legal agreements, early and late stage review mechanisms would provide an appropriate and proportionate approach to affordable housing should the scheme's viability improve in the future. The absence of affordable housing is disappointing. However, the substantial heritage benefits delivered through the restoration of the listed public house are considered a significant positive impact for the area. Turning to housing mix, initially only 14% of units were family size. The revised scheme provides 23%, still below the 39% target in policy. The shortfall is supported by a viability appraisal. While the proportion of family size units is below policy, the scheme provides a balanced range of unit sizes reflecting both borough-wide housing needs and site-specific constraints, and is considered acceptable in this context. Turning to quality of accommodation, the development provides an acceptable standard of accommodation. Most units meet or exceed minimum space standards and includes private outdoor areas. 2 units fall slightly short, both under 2 square meters, and is considered negligible on balance. A daylight and sunlight assessment confirms all habitable rooms meet required thresholds. 2 units are single aspect east facing, and the development provides acceptable accommodation quality overall. Turning to impact and amenity, the proposed development complies with BRE guidance on daylight and sunlight. All assessed windows retain over 80% of existing daylight values. South-facing windows meet sunlight standards, and neighboring gardens maintain over 80% of their current sunlight levels. To address privacy, second-floor balconies have been removed, and a condition will require privacy screening. A noise impact assessment confirms that internal standards can be met, and conditions will control construction, plant noise, and provide music and operating hours. Subject to these conditions, the development is not considered to result in any significant adverse impacts in terms of daylight, sunlight, privacy, and noise. Turning to sustainable transport, officers note concerns raised regarding potential parking congestions and increased trips. A parking survey was undertaken within the 200-meter radius of the site in March. Survey results show parking stress levels of 69 to 79% during midweek evening peaks and on Sunday evening, indicating a reasonable level of available on-street capacity in the area. A travel plan will be secured through planning conditions alongside a financial contribution via a Section 106 agreement to ensure ongoing monitoring. This approach will support long-term compliance and encourage a model shift away from car use. This table shows cycle parking provisions compared to policy requirements. Overall, the scheme exceeds long stay requirements and meets short stay provision where applicable. For the public house, 9 long stay and 10 short stay cycle spaces are proposed. While London Plan Policy T5 requires 39 short stay spaces based on the gross external area, the 10 spaces are considered acceptable on balance given the internal layout and gross internal area of 410 square meters. This slide summarizes the key Section 106 head of terms. Full details can be found within Appendix 3 of the committee report. Members are asked to note the update report and to resolve to agree to the recommendations as set out on the slide.
Thank you very much. I'm moving to questions and comments. Alan.
Can I ask about these 20th century bits of the building to be demolished? How big are they? What were they used for last time they was in use?
Cover that. So there's about 3 or 4 20th century extensions. One on the side facing White Road, which is a toilet block. There's a couple of extensions attached to one another at the rear, which are just sort of ad hoc flat roofed extensions. Will be supporting the pub as it was.
All right. So you're quite keen to get
yeah, I think the idea is to sort of strip the building back and then reveal, the original.
Just to build on that question for a moment, obviously the Old Spotted Dog is a really well-known local building and really important historically to Newham. And it's also the kind of planning application we don't deal with very often with these kind of old heritage buildings. I wondered if you could just kind of briefly assure the committee that the way that this is structured is really going to protect that precious old asset and make sure that it doesn't deteriorate further, and make sure that it's protected and safeguarded for the future as well?
I can cover that as well. So there's been an extensive period of pre-application consultation over about 2 years, I think, where we've sort of engaged proactively with the applicants. The one issue has been about trying to do some immediate temporary repairs just to stop any further water ingress or security breaches in the short term to make sure the sort of structure's sound. The applicant has done some work on that regard, and that's been reassuring. And then a key consideration in the planning application is trying to ensure that there's mechanisms within any consent to ensure that the housing is not delivered prior to all of the restoration works being completed to the listed building. So we've been key to kind of build in the 106 a kind of staged phasing programme whereby they have to deliver certain aspects of the listed building before they can occupy a portion of the housing.
That's helpful, thank you. And will there be things like visits and inspections if permission were to be granted?
Absolutely, I think that's all conditioned. So the applicant's required to notify us of their start date on site. We'll have a site meeting with officers in Historic England. There will be a kind of ongoing process of checking.
Well, on the topic of heritage, and I promise I will come back to members, I'd be keen to know a little bit from the applicants about whether you have any plans, if you were to get permission, about how people using the site could understand a bit about its history and heritage.
Yeah, I think we did the Westbridge Hotel in Stratford, and there we've got.
Sorry, could you speak up a little bit so the microphone?
Yeah, we did the Westbridge Hotel in Stratford, and in there we had some wall displays with photographs. We've got some of the previous residents who lived there to come and talk to people and sort of to explain the history of it within their lifetime. So obviously it's got a lot longer history than that. But I think a lot of people are aware of the history back to Henry VIII potentially. I think in the area people know about that, but we'll certainly play up on that. I think we've still got the old statue that was outside as well. So.
That's good to know, thank you. And I think you're right that some people do know the history of that building, but obviously other people won't, and other people might be using the site and not be aware of it. So I guess I would just kind of encourage you to think about ways that residents and people staying at the hotel, and particularly people using the pub if it is brought back into use, are able to get an appreciation of the kind of things that have happened on that site before. Blossom, did you raise your hand first? And I think James.
Super, thank you. I had 2 questions, one for officers actually, just in relation to the summary and Appendix 3. There are a couple of elements in terms of the contribution which still are showing as to be confirmed, so I wondered if those could be clarified. Yeah, first of all. And then I wanted to ask about engagement with groups who have an involvement with the site. So in particular, the Clapton Community Football Club and the Old Spotted Dog Ground Trust, and whether you could outline conversation, consultation. It's fairly clear from the comments that there's a real strength of feeling around this particular site, particularly in terms of its heritage, but also its use and making really appropriate reference to that as the chair was describing. So yeah, I wondered if you could talk us through what that has looked like, the conversation, attempts to reach out and so on.
I think initially running the hotels.
Yeah, there's been extensive, over the course of a number of years, there's been extensive consultation with the local residents and the community as such. The director's been in close contact with Save the Spotted Dog, and they've worked extremely closely throughout the number of years, and the scheme's actually supported and has been supported throughout. What more recently is the Clapton Community Football Club has actually been basically actually bought the ground, and basically to that extent, there was a little bit of misunderstanding whereby it was felt that the Save the Spotted Dog was actually part of the Clapton Community Football Club as well, because basically they were actually one. So although there was close consultation with the Clapton Save the Spotted Dog, The Clapton Community Football Club in the initial consultation actually said they hadn't actually been contacted. When the second consultation was actually put forward, we actually wrote to the Clapton Community Football Club and the the All Spotted Dog Ground Trust, and we actually wrote to them about 3 or 4 times. We did eventually get contact with them after about a month. We did set up a meeting. We did actually meet with them. We discussed all the concerns they actually had. We actually informed them that the scheme they were actually going forward, and it was actually online. We also actually opened the door to actually any other concerns and comments they actually had. We've not heard from them, but generally speaking, their concerns at the time, we addressed every single one of their concerns. We actually changed the scheme to actually meet their concerns in every way. There were a couple of concerns which we couldn't, which was basically affordable housing. They were quite strongly intent in having 50% affordable housing on that site, which was simply something that was not feasible, practical, possible to do. And they also wanted us to consider a cooperative on the site, which we did consider. Unfortunately, again, on viability issues, it wasn't something that could actually move ahead with. When we left, we discussed all the issues, we discussed in terms of moving forward and also supporting them in terms of the warehouse. They actually purchased a warehouse next door, and we actually discussed how we'd actually work closely and actually bringing that into community use as well. So there has been consultation right throughout the time, but more importantly, there's actually been grassroots consultation as well. The initial scheme was a hotel scheme, and the feedback we actually got was the residents were very concerned with respect to the way the hotel would actually be in terms of the number of people coming and going. And we then felt also that this scheme was a much better scheme. Also, the hotel scheme integrated the pub within the hotel scheme. This is a much better scheme whereby the Spotted Dog, going back to the heritage character, actually holds its own and is kind of independent in itself. And that will be a legacy in terms of very, very long term that we actually want to keep, and the character and basically the history of it, because it is one of the oldest secular buildings within the borough. It's something that needs to be kind of preserved, looked after, and actually happening. Overall, in terms of moving forward, that is the intent to actually keep the pub and its history and its a legacy, basically. We're trying to kind of uphold that together with the residents as much as possible.
Thank you. And I think Blossom's first question was probably for officers about some of the contributions, which are TBC.
Yeah, I think there's 2 outstanding ones. One is the monitoring fee and one is the BMG, about diversity net gain monitoring contribution, both of which needs the input of the S106 team, which is a separate team from development management. And we've emailed the team, and maybe because of their workload, they haven't replied before the committee date. But yeah, we will follow up on this and make sure that it will be included in the Section 106 agreement. That contribution is not usually contested by applicants, so it's usually,
Does that leave you content, or did you have a follow-up question?
We are where we are, right? Yeah. So that will form part of Section 106 agreement to be considered.
I wanted to come back to some of the comments made by Clapton CMC. I know that committee members have received an email from the club asking that we consider deferring the application because they haven't had a chance to respond, or say they haven't had a chance to respond to the second consultation. I wondered if I could get an opinion from officers on that request, please.
So on the update report, we've outlined what we've done in July. So reconsultation letters for both the full planning application and the listed building consent were issued on the 29th of July this year to more than 300 neighbouring properties by post, and the press notice was published on the 6th of August, which is consistent with statutory and local publicity requirements. A copy of the consultation letters and the list of address is circulated in the meeting room on your table. The revised plans have been publicly available on the planning register since the 29th of July 2025 and have remained accessible online for over 4 months. This has provided a reasonable opportunity for interested parties to review the changes and submit comments. Following the July consultation, 4 objections were received, although 3 were from addresses that had already commented during the first consultation rounds. I've listed the addresses which submitted objections following the consultation on the update report. So as I mentioned in the presentation, the key design changes subject to reconsultation included the access arrangements and the orientation of bedrooms. Given the nature of the revisions and the consultation undertaken, we did not consider that a deferral was necessary, as there are unlikely to be any material reasons that would change the recommendation for approval. It is considered that these steps have ensured transparency and fairness in the process, and that members have all relevant information before them to make an informed decision.
That's helpful, thank you. I mean, I obviously weigh the contributions of Clapton CFC very carefully. They're a really valued part of the community and a really important stakeholder in that area. But I also do note we've got the information about what was sent out, and I can also really clearly see from the papers here how the design has been adapted in response to the submission that they've sent in. So certainly from my point of view, I'm minded not to ask the committee to defer. Were there further questions or comments from members, please? James?
Just in terms of the heritage, one thing that other applicants have done in terms of when a building is particularly significant, so it's been done in town, and in a proposal in Stratford for a cottage was there, it was demolished and it was planned to be redone, is actually having a blue plaque. I think that would be really a good signifier, one that you hopefully, if you get permission and multi-site development, you actually will signify that this is part of the local area, this is a heritage scheme. And the second part of my question is around the quality and the design, and making sure that it, one, fits the tone of the area. It's a Victorian build around the area, but it's also respect the former heritage of that site as well.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. We'll take on board the blue plaque and find out actually how to do it. Absolutely, we want to keep the heritage, character and personality of the pub, and to that extent, I think we spent about 4 years consulting with the Conservation Planning Department. The scheme is not just a scheme that's come from us, it's actually been jointly done, working very, very closely with the planning department to actually keep the heritage, the character and personality of the pub, as well as kind of blending the development around it. But yeah, absolutely, we take that on board. The whole thing is we want to leave a legacy of the pub, the long-term sustainability. It's something that we really actually want to push for and keep.
John?
Can you clarify what design, secured by design elements are included in design?
We've had extensive consultation.
So the entry to the apartments is obviously really secure lobbies, such as audio visual, secure door, secure lobby where you post meters, and a secure door onto the staircases and into the common garden. Similarly from the other side, if that continues to go. The boundaries between the different uses are 2.1 metre high. Walls, planting sometimes 2.1 metre high. Railings, again, with defensive planting, berberis, holly, spiky plants, and the family garden at the back of the pub, that has a separate railing, so that can be secured off, so the children safe don't run out onto the roads. There. And well, the listed building itself will refer the consultation into detail, because that's sort of integrating modern blocking with outdoors listed pieces of the fabric, so that's going to have to be done in detail rather than principle. So.
Just to add, we had a meeting with sort of that actually we ourselves and the planning department to actually design the scheme that was best suited for the development in terms of taking into account the character of the pub, to actually do that, to actually make sure that the secure design aspect of it doesn't actually take away the character and personality of the pub.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I wanted to pick up with officers some of the concerns that were raised by local residents around parking. I understand that the development that's proposed is car-free, but I think in particular some of the concerns from the consultation were from people about the impact of potential customers to the pub, and particularly in the hours in the evening after the PZ in the area has expired. So basically people can just park on the roads around. And I wondered if we had a kind of an adequate response to those nearby residents who are worried about it.
Yeah, so the site is within the Green Street North RVZ. The hours are 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday to Saturday. I've had a chat with the transport officers yesterday, and they've noted that to consult people about extending the hours, it will require £15,000 contribution. Yeah, so that was the update we've got from yesterday. But that was not, during the consultation process, this was not recommended by the transport officers. And because, like, as noted in the presentation, the applicant did submit a parking stress survey. So because there has been evidence that shows that there are capacity within the 200 meters radius, it might not be considered to meet the relevant test. We do request the contribution.
No, I understand the results from the survey, but obviously also hear the voice of the residents. I guess what we could do, if the committee is in agreement, is if we were to grant permission, then I could flag up the potential impact on parking on the neighbouring roads to the local ward councillors and suggest that they keep an eye on that in conjunction with our colleagues in highways and respond to any impacts as they come up later. The other question that I had was, of course, about the provision or lack thereof of affordable homes. It's obviously, it's very difficult to look at the provision of affordable housing when we know how incredibly important it is for people in Newham and we know how high our ambitions are. We take on board all the comments about the tilted balance, in particular about the cost of the heritage parts of this application, but it's still really surprising to see an application come forward with absolutely no affordable homes. And I wondered if officers had gone back to the applicant to see if there might be anything more that could be done here.
Yes, in the pre-app meetings, we've requested multiple times to explore the opportunity for affordable housing, but because BMP's review also noted that there is a deficit, so, without evidence to show that they have the capability of delivering affordable homes, we find it disappointing as well, but we trust that the late stage viability review, which will be secured through the Section 106 agreement, and it will be undertaken once 75% of the residential units have been sold. If there is a surplus that's identified at that stage, it will be secured as a financial contribution to its off-site affordable provision, with 80% of the surplus allocated to the council and 20% retained by the applicant.
And for clarity, for anybody watching this who hasn't come across that before, that effectively means that although the assessment of the figures at the moment shows that there isn't a surplus to provide affordable homes, if the situation were to change and more money were to be made than is anticipated now, then we don't effectively lose a share of that for affordable homes for Newham residents. Is that a reasonable sort of summary?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Were there any further or final questions from members?
Yes, I've just remembered one. I'm looking at this proposed condition 24 operational hours.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's normal to put a planning condition on something that's usually controlled by other law, in this case licensing.
Which page are you referring to, Alan?
It hasn't got a number.
Is it the update report?
It's in the update. Yeah. I think about the hours.
Yeah, I figured this went to have operating hours and planning conditions. And we note that licensing is a separate matter, but
were there any further comments or questions from committee members, please? In which case, would you mind sharing the recommendation, please? We have 2 votes to make on this application. So the first one, as ever, we asked to note the update report, resolved to agree the reasons for approval as set out, etc. Can I ask those in favour to please show their hands? And that is unanimous, thank you. And the second application, again, asks us to note the update report and to agree the reasons for approval as set out, etc. Those in favour, please. And that is also unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of item 8. Although we do still have 2 items on the agenda, having read through the papers, as I know colleagues will have as well, I'm going to suggest that rather than have an officer report on these, because of the nature of the applications, which are quite minor, that we move straight to the vote on each item, which our standing orders do allow us to do. Are committee members in agreement with that, please? Thank you very much. In which case, for agenda item 9, there is still a recommendation. Is it possible to share? Oh, is this a recommendation for agenda item 9? Yeah. In which case, agenda item 9, which is the site of 302 to 312 High Street, we've already noted the interest that we have as members of the Labour Party, but that doesn't prevent us from voting on this. We're asked to agree the reasons for approval as set out with the grant plan permission, etc. Can I please ask those in favour to raise their hands? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. And similarly for agenda item 10, this is for number 1 Bradfield Road in Silvertown.
We don't have a screen share, but it's on page 547.
On page 547, the Strategic Development Committee is asked to resolve to 1, agree the reasons for approval as set out in this report, 2, delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development, etc. The full wording is in front of you or will be available online for anybody who wishes to read it. Can I please ask those in favour to raise their hands? That is also unanimous. Thank you very much. I don't believe that we have any other business, and so probably the final item on the agenda will be the date of our next meeting, which is on the 13th of January. Thank you very much. And to anyone whom we aren't seeing until the 13th of January, I'd like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a peaceful New Year.